Hi, this is Joe again with another review. For the sake of this video, I'm going to be discussing the ESPN 30 for 30 film documentary on Deion Sanders. Let's Play 2, I think it was called Double Play actually. Of course, this is only a 1 hour documentary film. Instead of usually like an hour and a half or 2 hour film that usually is, this thing's only an hour. Because it only takes place in one particular day in the career of Deion Sanders, or Prime Time Sanders, whatever nickname you prefer. Of course, those of you who don't know who Deion Sanders is, or was, he was a two-sport athlete. I mean, other than Bo Jackson, I mean, he was the second most popular, I don't want to say popular, but I would say he was the second known player to play both sports, both football and baseball at the same time. But the only difference was that Bo Jackson waited till when the baseball season was over, then he would go play football for the Kansas City Royals, and then later on he played for the mainly for the Oakland Raiders. Even though Bo Jackson later on played for the Chicago White Sox, but he mostly played for the Kansas City Royals and the Oakland Raiders in the NFL. Deion Sanders originally came up with the Yankees originally, and then he got traded and free agent to the Braves, and then he got drafted and signed with the Atlanta Falcons. So not only did he play for both a football team and baseball team, but he played both sports in the same city, which Bo Jackson didn't do. But Bo Jackson, I think, was a better athlete than Deion Sanders was, and I think he could have been great in both sports if he hadn't gotten his hip broken during a football game. I mean, that's what ended his career, really. But anyway, this is about Deion Sanders. And what happened was, in 1991, and I always said 2001, in 1991, he had a deal with the Atlanta Braves that he would play through or to July 31st, and then after July 31st, he would report to training camp with the Falcons, and then he would strictly play football for the rest of the year. Well, they decided to come back and play baseball for the Braves because they were in the playoffs against. He had to go back to playing for the Braves because Otis Nixon got suspended 50 games for testing positive for drugs. I think it was for cocaine back then, not steroids. They would come later on. That was Otis Nixon, but with drug testing in baseball, I mean. So he had no choice but to go back to playing baseball for the Braves because they had nobody else. So they had to literally beg Deion Sanders to come back and play baseball, and since they were stuck, Deion Sanders, okay, since you guys are stuck and you have no choice, to come back. So what happened was, and he was training with the Falcons like during the week, and or in between games, I should say, and he would play the playoff games or the World Series games, whatever the case may be. So the next year, when the Braves qualified for the playoffs in 1992, Deion Sanders says, okay, in case something like this happens again, I want to make sure that known that I'm going to stay with the Braves throughout the whole playoffs and the World Series if we get to the World Series this year. So what happened was, one of the games on Saturday night was, I think it was Game 4 of the Braves playoff series, Braves Pirates series. They played the Pirates that year in 1992, and next night, since I think the Blue Jays, they switched the time for the Blue Jays game for the Sunday game. They switched Game 5 of the Braves Pirates series to a night game. So instead of a day game, which was I think for some reason they switched the time. for some reason. It was originally supposed to be a day game, like a 3 o'clock game or 4 o'clock game, whatever it was, and they switched it to an 8:30 game. CBS did. So what they did was, Deion said, "Oh, since they switched the game, I have a shot to go back down to Atlanta, play for the Falcons, and then fly up and try and play that game that night." Which, in other words, folks, he went back on his word. So when Deion Sanders says, "Fuck you, Atlanta Braves," excuse my language, he says, "Fuck you, Atlanta Braves, I'm going to play for the Falcons." Because the Falcons play a 1 o'clock game on Sunday. And because he was late, he didn't play the first downs for the Falcons, or for offensive plays when they were on offense. When he came in the rest of the game, he didn't really do much. He didn't do a hell of a lot in that game. And so when the game was over, by 4 o'clock, a little bit after 4, he flew up, he showered. He had to have IV because he was dehydrated. He had to have an IV because he was dehydrated. Then he flew in a private jet to the airport in Pittsburgh, and he got on a helicopter to Three Rivers Stadium. That was the stadium they were playing at that time, to play in the game. But guess what? Because the Braves management was pissed off at Deion Sanders for going back on his word that Bobby Cox benched him. I think he came up with he eventually came up with a pinch hitter, but he didn't start the game. He didn't play in the field. He was a defensive replacement for anybody, particularly for Ron Gant in left field, because Deion Sanders usually played left field for the Braves at that time. And so he just didn't play. I think he did come up with a pinch hitter because they didn't have anybody else. So to come out with a pinch hitter, so he was a pinch hitter, but he didn't really play in the game. He was benched. He didn't play at all, and I don't think he even came up with a pinch hitter. He didn't play at all in the whole game because he was pissed off. And of course, the real story was behind this incident was that because the reason why he did that is because he had a Nike deal. One of the conspiracy theories is that because of the Nike deal, so we're going to sell a sneaker because he played 2 sports and won 2 different sports on the same day. So a lot of people criticized the Nike deal he had because Nike was the one who was pushing this thing. And said, no, it was Deion Sanders' idea to do this. And like I said, he's went back on his word and he got criticized for it, heavily criticized for it. The Braves didn't like it. I think the reason why because Ted Turner kept him on the roster at that time, because Bobby Cox and John Schuerholz was the general manager for the Braves then, wanted Deion Sanders off the World Series roster because of what he did. But Ted Turner overruled him, who was the owner of the Braves then, and said, he's staying on the team because I like him. So because of Ted Turner, he was able to stay on the playoff and World Series roster for the Braves, even though he went back on his word. And of course, the big story was, what happened was that you can see this clip on YouTube actually from ESPN. What happened was the Braves they did win the pennant, even though I still feel that Seb Green was out in that play in the 7th game of the playoffs. Seb Green was out, folks. I don't care what the umpire says, he was out. He was out on that play. But what happened was, in the post-game celebration, Deion Sanders went after Tim McCarver, who was, at that time, he was working for CBS. And also at that time, Tim McCarver was also the announcer for my team, the New York Mets. So I know Tim McCarver very well, and as an announcer, I mean. I don't know him personally, he doesn't know him as an announcer. And he heavily criticized, rightly so, and not only him, but Storm McDonough, who did the play-by-play, not only in the Braves Pirates playoff series, but he also did the play-by-play for the World Series as well. It's the same 2 announcers. And both of them really heavily criticized Deion Sanders for being, a selfish player, which he was. No matter how Deion Sanders spins this thing, he was selfish. He was a son of a bitch. Went back on his word. He was an arrogant mother, the rest. So he deserves every bit of criticism possible for this thing. He deserves it all. So what happened was during the post-game celebration, Deion Sanders went after McCarver several times. I think about 4 times, at least 3 or 4 times, with a big bucket of ice water, and he dumps it on Tim McCarver's head. He hits him in the face with a bucket of ice. He had a bucket full of ice water, and he grabs it and he throws the ice water into McCarver's face several times, dunks him. And you can see during the post-game celebration, because McCarver happened to be there. If it was CBS, I would not have put McCarver in the Braves locker room after that game. But they assigned him in there, and McCarver, no matter what you feel about McCarver's comments towards Deion Sanders, he didn't deserve, what he got from him. But McCarver being a professional announcer that he is, he's there doing a job for CBS. If he wasn't there to do, to cover the celebration, the trophy presentation in the Braves locker room, he would have beat the shit out of Deion Sanders. And I mean, I felt they were going to have a fight if he wasn't there, because being the professional announcer that he is. And as a matter of fact, Tim McCarver is a Hall of Fame announcer. Because he got into the Baseball Hall of Fame as a baseball announcer. He would have got into a fight with Deion. No question about it. But what happened was, they got into this fight, and unfortunately, what stuck was that Deion Sanders was never fined or suspended for what he did, because it was part of the quote clubhouse celebration. And of course, if you see videos of Tim McCarver when he was in the Met locker rooms, when they had a celebration, talking about particularly '86 and '88 in particular, during the division clinchings in 1986 and 1988. As well as covering the Mets in the '86 playoffs. McCarver was there, working for ABC, because they had the playoffs in '86, the baseball playoffs. So he was there for it. So and he was there covering the Mets all year long. So all the players knew Tim, and they know how critical he could be at times. So they were used to they may not like it, but they were used to his criticisms if they did something wrong. Of course, the announcers, even if it was the man announcers, they deserve criticism. And Deion Sanders deserves it. And of course, he says, that McCarver was wrong, and Deion Sanders still feels that he was in the right for doing what he did, and McCarver was doing it wrong. And McCarver demanded an apology for Deion Sanders, and Sanders never, to this day, has never apologized to Tim McCarver for ducking him in ice water. As a matter of fact, when he was hunting down McCarver, he also nailed Halle Berry, who was then dating or engaged to his teammate David Justice at that time. And he dunked her with ice water as well. So it wasn't just McCarver, it was David Justice's fiancée at the time. Actress Halle Berry was very early on in her career. Deion Sanders was not exactly Mr. Popularity. And he still hates Deion Sanders for what he did, going back on his word and doing what he did to Tim McCarver. But, you can tell my voice is starting to go. But, this was a good documentary. At least it shows what happened and what he did. And Deion Sanders is still wrong for what he did. Going back on his word and trying to play both sports on the same day. I'm glad he didn't get the opportunity. I'm glad that at least, even though I hate Bobby Cox because he's a loser. I mean, he came in first place, I think it was 14 out of 15 years, and only won like once. If you came in first place 15 times and only won one World Series, you're a loser. Or won the World Series once, you're a loser. And he got in the Hall of Fame for being a loser. Really. Same thing with John Schuerholz and all the other Braves that got in the Hall of Fame. They all suck. But that's my review of the 30 for 30 show with Deion Sanders. Please click on the video, please rate it. Please subscribe to my channel. Please forward this video onto your Facebook pages. You check out all my reviews and on my YouTube channel, rallyc.com, so WDY.C.com. Homepage of our reviewer, Chris Lee Moore, and please check out all of his videos on his website. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.